This is a D6 Generation Pip. Bite-sized content for a busy gamer. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ.
Hey, what about me?
Oh yeah, and sometimes featuring Rafe, Hollywood Granger.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the D6 Generation. My name is Russ, and I am very excited to talk to you about some of the video games I've been playing lately. I just finished up Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West. Been playing that one for a while now on the PlayStation. Really enjoyed that, so I wanted to share my thoughts on that one. But then also some new, I don't know if it's new on the Xbox. I think it's old hotness on PC, but it's new on the Xbox. That is Pathfinder, Path of the Righteous, which is a role-playing game, obviously based on the Pathfinder tabletop RPG designed for video games. Came out last year on PC, as I mentioned, and now it's available on consoles. And I think most longtime listeners know that I'm more of a console gamer than a PC gamer, and so just started playing it on the Xbox. And thought I'd say my shots on that as well. It's definitely worth a look. So want to talk about both those things. I haven't done a video game update in quite some time, but before we get to there, I do have a couple other updates. You may have noticed that the Dungeons and Dragons episodes, the live play, have paused. We had a lot going on this fall and decided to pause them. I'm going to give an update on those in a little bit. I'm going to try to convince Rafe to come on. Maybe we can talk a little bit. Maybe get some of the players to come on too and kind of chat a little bit about where it ended. I was kind of hoping we could end it with a nice little wrap-up session, but just unfortunately, due to scheduling and some other challenges, we had to kind of pause it. But I'd love to share some final thoughts there. Maybe also share some of the things about where I was thinking of taking it. And who knows, it may start up again, so I don't want to spoil anything. You never really know with these things. But I did want to I don't know if I ever officially updated everyone that was sort of paused at the moment. But then the other news, we've been talking a little bit about the game that I designed, Grimdark Dungeon Master, which was live on GameFound. Just this past Friday, we decided to pause it for a whole variety of reasons on GameFound. We're going to be relaunching it over on Kickstarter on October 25th. So on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022, in case you're listening to this thing years in the future, we're going to be relaunching Grimdark Dungeon Master over on Kickstarter for a whole variety of reasons. And I think a couple things. We learned a ton with the first launch. And we got a lot of great feedback from listeners like all of you, from other folks who were checking out the page. We made some changes on the fly that I thought were good. But we really felt that there was a bunch of things going on in GameFound at the time that just wasn't for us. You know, I don't want to speak ill of GameFound. I think a lot of people have found some great success over there, but it wasn't working out for us due to the nature of some of the things, how they do things. And so we decided that maybe we would stop the campaign over there and then restart on Kickstarter with all the lessons learned. So if you're interested in the game and you backed us, or you pledged, or you were thinking of pledging, or you're following it, we're still going to go for this. We're just going to restart on October 25th. And to follow all that action, you can either go to Kickstarter and look for Grimdark Dungeon Master over there, or you can just type in grimdarkdungeonmaster.com, and it will take you right to the Kickstarter coming soon page where you can follow us and you'll be notified exactly when the campaign goes live. And one of the things we learned was we had no early bird pledges. And so that's something we're going to be correcting. So there will be early bird pledges on the Kickstarter. And the other thing I wanted to mention that we learned also was that we didn't have a lot of our middle tier pledges that came with all the expansions for the game with extra heroes required you to get miniatures. And we had a lot of folks who said, you know what, the acrylic pieces you guys are doing are amazing. Actually, the acrylics are even cooler than the miniatures. And for whatever reason, I don't necessarily want to collect more miniatures. So I want the acrylics with all the expansions. So now we had a lot of other people who were very excited about the miniatures. So don't get me wrong. I think some people want both. But what we underestimated was how many people would really just want the acrylic sets and all of those at one pledge level. So we're going to have a pledge level just for that as well, if folks are interested in those things also. So obviously I don't want this whole episode to be about Grimdark Dungeon Master, but if you're interested in that, interested in following along what's going on there, or if you were excitedly anxious to get involved in the project, again, head on over to grimdarkdungeonmaster.com DD6GenerationPep.com, and you can follow all our exploits over on Kickstarter as we prepare to ramp up and get things started. If you have any questions for me about it, hit us over on the Discord or hit me on Twitter, and you can ask us all about that sort of stuff as well. So that's the update on Grimdark Dungeon Master. Still a thing, just coming to Kickstarter in a couple of weeks here. Again, October 25th. All right, now on to video games. All right, so a couple of video games here. What happened was I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn. I really like the first Horizon Zero Dawn. And for those who aren't familiar, it's a PlayStation exclusive IP title. Well, it's 2 titles now. Following the exploits, it's a post-apocalyptic world in Horizon Zero Dawn where it's the far-flung future, and humanity decided that to save the world from total doom, we would need to terraform the entire planet. And so they created all these different machines to terraform the planet and bring it back from global environmental destruction. And so there's all these giant, massive, cool-looking, dinosaur-esque, if you will, but also real-world animal-esque robots. So there's robots that look like giant elk, and there's robots that look like sort of Stegosaurus-y, or there's robots that look like giant crocodiles, or there's robots that look like massive Brontosaurus-type things, festooned with metal and rocket launchers and all kinds of crazy stuff, because why would you not? So in this, but everything else, the humanity, it's generations later, right? And humanity's been sort of has been reverted back to primitive ways. Most everybody's armed with sort of spears and bows and maybe some bone swords, that kind of stuff. But there's these robots running around that are sort of attack humans on sight. So you're in this world of these robots, and you play this protagonist, Aloy, who's this really cool sort of huntress type character. And you level her up with all her abilities, and you go around. It's an open world game, right? So it's a very open world. You can run around and do all these sorts of things, and you try to save the world. That was the first one, and you end up trying to figure out, like, why is the post-apocalyptic world in trouble? Why are things getting worse over time? And so you save the day in the first game, and then in the second game, there's a new problem to solve, and I don't want to spoil it. But I really liked what they did with the second game. It was, first of all, it was a PlayStation 5 exclusive. So very amazing graphics. I think it was a PlayStation 5 exclusive. I'm saying that now. It might have still worked on the PlayStation 4 also. But I played it on the 5. And so the graphics were, insane. One of the big additions was you could swim underwater now. So it very much... it had a very sort of Assassin's Creed vibe where you could pretty much do anything, right? You can ride these monsters. She has the ability to sort of like hack them and tame them, and then she can ride these different creatures and around the world. In the second game, she can acquire a glider. You can climb pretty much anything, just like Assassin's Creed. So it's very much got that go anywhere, do anything sort of situation. There's different little camps of bad guys throughout the world. Again, not unlike Assassin's Creed, where you can plan your sort of attack and reason to take them out. Great story. One of the things about the game that I thought was really interesting was how the dialogue was handled. So whenever you're talking to people, there wasn't a lot of choices in this game. There was a couple of things you could do, but for the most part, the choices didn't matter a lot. But what was sort of interesting was that whenever the characters would talk, they did a really pretty good job of the characters actually acting. They did obviously a lot of motion capture. And so the characters would gesture properly. They would walk around when they were pontificating. Their expressions were very expressive. And so even in a dialogue where in like a classic video game, the two characters would be standing there talking to each other, they were very expressive here, but they weren't really cutscenes. It's sort of hard to describe, but they would kind of move around and do things. But then always it was great because at the end of the dialogue, they'd go back to their mark exactly so that they'd be back in the dialogue tree and be standing in the right spot for the rest of the dialogue tree. So it was a little bit staged, but it was also kind of cool because it made it more, real. There was more, they were emoting. I really thought that was pretty neat. And I don't want to say it was photorealistic imagery, but a lot of great detail on the characters. The world is just really cool. The post-apocalyptic world. They had a lot of cool different environments. So did they add a lot of gameplay elements? I would say the only critical thing I would say of Forbidden West, if you played the original Zero Dawn, it felt improved, particularly in the graphics area. But I think the biggest problem with it was I'm a big over-leveling guy. So I like to do all the side quests I can and get leveled up before I go on to the next area. And so I'll generally do that. I know some people like to blast through games. I like to do all the leveling. And what I found out about myself with this is that, and I'll do this with Assassin's Creed too. Assassin's Creed games are one of my favorite genres also. I really loved Ragnarok, for example. So I'll go out and I'll over level in a region, do all the side stuff, get a little higher level on thought, and I'll go into the next region that's like, let's say it's level 8, and I'll be going in there at like level 12 kind of thing. And this is great fun for me until when I find out what happens is, the reason I've ended up solving these games and just do all the little side stuff is, what I found out about myself is that once I've level capped myself, and I've kind of got all the abilities my character can ever get, even if there's a lot more things to do, I become bored. Like, the actual process of continually improving my character is important to me. And what's interesting about Zero Dawn is there are all these side quests that actually have pretty interesting stories, and things will happen, and cool people will die, and other things will happen. It's kind of cool, but if I can't level when I go over there, like, and I don't mean can't level, like, but if I'm already maxed out, I'm just getting more XP, doesn't do anything, I start to care less about it, which is really sort of weird. Like, I get hung up on that. It's in a weird sort of way. So I kind of leveled till I hit the peak. Now, it was really weird about Zero Dawn. In Assassin's Creed, for some reason, I usually hit this point too. But when I hit it, most of everything's kind of solved. Like, there isn't a lot of stuff left to do. I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'm level capping, and there's also everything's kind of done. So I'll just, do that last quest that says from beyond here, don't go here until you're ready because you can't go back kind of thing, And so in Zero Dawn, I was looking at this and I'm like, man, I'm close to the end. I feel like I'm close to the end. Like, I know the mission path I need to go down to kind of finish the game probably, but there's still so many areas of the world I haven't really played in very much. And there's a lot of side quests over here I haven't really done, but I didn't need to do them. So what was interesting, and I couldn't decide if I like this or not. So here's what it basically meant. I could skip whole sections of the game, like, and still max level and still complete it and still felt like I did a lot of cool stuff. But like, I decided not to play, do a certain set of, like, a lot of collecting quests. And by not doing the collecting quest, I could do things I enjoyed doing, like fighting the bad guy bases more. And I could max level, even though I didn't quite get all the bad guy bases. I think I could have also done a lot of the collecting quests and never gone ahead and fought the bad guy bases, the side quest bases, and I would have been fine also. So it was sort of interesting in that it, as a completionist, I was like, man, I kind of wanted to do most of this stuff, but I could really focus on what was fun for me and still hit max level. So I think I like that, although it did feel weird ending the game with so much other stuff I could have done, but just decided not to. So I think I like what they did there, though. My only negative about Zero Dawn would be that Forbidden West would be that I thought there were so many great peak moments in the game, so many interesting story elements, some really interesting twists in the middle, a very dark scene in old San Francisco that I really thought was pretty cool. I love the cultures they created in each of these different groups. That was fantastic. The only thing that was a bummer was the very end, like the very, very end, the final sort of battle scenes and story felt anticlimactic to me. And I can't explain why. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not really going to dive into it too much. But if anybody wants to chat with me about it in Discord or anything, reach out. Because I felt like, I don't know, I felt like the end could have been stronger. It was kind of a letdown. The middle was better. Like the part where you prep yourself up for the final showdown with the main bad guys. There's like this middle section where you get all your team together and you build your base and all that stuff. That was super cool. Like, I love an open world game where you build a base and the base gets better. That was really cool too. So it had that cool element to it. So I liked it. If you enjoyed the first Forbidden West, I would definitely recommend it. But in the end, I was kind of like, good, not great. And I don't know why I feel that way exactly, but good, not great. But it was extremely polished. I couldn't find a bug anywhere. The thing worked great. All the quests were perfect. The pathfinding was great. Like, everything just worked. The graphics were cool. All this stuff. Everything was great. Not a bug to be found. But I felt about it in the end. Well, I liked it. I'll get the third one when it comes out because it's fun. And I'm a sucker for open world exploring games. Like, I love Assassin's Creed. That's probably my favorite all time. Just gets me sucked in every time the next Assassin's Creed comes out. So any games like or near Assassin's Creed, I get sucked into. And so Zero Dawn's right there. And I really like the protagonist a lot. Aloy's awesome. So I like it. I just don't love it. And I can't put my finger on why. I think it's actually the story itself, not the world. The world's great. The actual story, the actual villains, the actual, like, those, the Aloy's friends are all great. Their characters are wonderful. Particularly a couple of the characters are really fun. I love them. But the main villains, that could have been better. I don't know. They didn't do anything for me. I don't know what to tell you. So that was Zero Dawn. Now here's an interesting though. Perfectly polished game. Kind of left me feeling good, not great. But let's talk about a different game now that I just recently discovered, which is Pathfinder, as in Pathfinder the role-playing game, right? Pathfinder, Path of the Righteous. I guess if you're a Pathfinder game fan, you got to have the word path in there, because why would you not? So Pathfinder, I think most of our listeners probably know, Pathfinder is the role-playing game that was sort of a spin-off of Dungeons & Dragons around the 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons era, when a lot of fans got frustrated with Dungeons & Dragons 4e and wanted something different. And so Pathfinder, the role-playing game, was born, which was basically Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, and then slowly tweaked and turned into something that is its own animal, but you can definitely see the roots of Dungeons & Dragons just all throughout there. Nothing wrong with that. So I had not played Pathfinder, the role-playing game, ever, which is, shame on me. As you guys know, I'm a huge Dungeons & Dragons fan. I never got distracted by Pathfinder for whatever reason. I do have many friends. Rafe plays Pathfinder quite a bit, as a matter of fact, so he knows all about that. But I do like Divinity, and I love video games, role-playing video games that are party management video games, right? So I like role-playing games. I mean, I do like a game like Skyrim, where you're just wandering around with one character leveling that person up, or like Horizon Zero Dawn or Assassin's Creed kind of thing. So, of course, there's many fantasy versions like that, where you're just leveling one yourself up. But I really like games like Dragon Age or Divinity, where you have a party, right, of characters, and each of these characters has a personality and a backstory and their own agenda and their own reasons for being there. And you manage those characters in a way. You can level them up. You can either let them auto level, or you can manage the leveling yourself. They're each their own class. They're all on their own stuff. You're managing equipment, deciding who's going to get what new +2 longbow you just found. But you also have your own character to manage, right? So you create your own character, and then you meet these other characters along the way, these NPCs that join your party, and they're kind of like characters you control. Baldur's Gate does this too, right? They're kind of like characters you can control, but they might leave later, right? Or they might turn out to be bad guys. You don't know. And they also give you their own side quests, and you can decide how much you want to help them, or do you help them, or do you not help them? Do you keep them in the party, or kick them out of the party? All kinds of sort of challenges, right? And what does that do to your party, and what does that do to your emotions and the party you want to build, and can they help you save the world, or whatever you're trying to do, right? So I love party management games with moral conundrums, because to me that's sort of a good D&D campaign kind of has that, right? There's always a little bit of player tension. There's always a little bit of moral conundrums there amongst the players. There's always a little bit of competing interests. That just makes the D&D campaign a little more fun, because it's a little more like life. And so anytime a video game can emulate that, even with computer-controlled characters, I find that interesting. And it's particularly compelling when you're actually controlling the character and leveraging the character in combat to win battles, and you're depending upon them, but you also kind of know that their backstory and everything's not really compatible where you want to go. And eventually you have to make a decision about this person, right? So I always find that really interesting. And Dragon Age was one of the first, Mass Effect did this to an extent too, but Dragon Age is one of the first to really do that well. There's several other games that have done it before and after. The other thing though about this game that's interesting, so it has that, right? So it has all of that built in there. And I was a little nervous about it because I was reading the reviews, and a lot of the reviews, because the PC version's been out for about a year now, and I hadn't even come on my radar. And then I saw it on the Xbox, just released section, and I'm like, ooh, this looks interesting. And of course, being Pathfinder piqued my interest too, because I do like Dungeons and Dragons. It would give me a good chance to kind of peek under the hood in Pathfinder a little bit, because you get access to all the, by the way, I used to play the old Golden Box SSI games on PC that were the old Dungeons and Dragons games, like Pool of Radiance and stuff, which are sort of like this too, right? So I love those kind of games. So this is like that, but the modern version, again, like Divinity or Baldur's Gate, that kind of stuff. So very excited about this, but the reviews are kind of like, careful, it's buggy. It's fun. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of cool stuff happening here, but it's buggy. I'm like, well, it's the Xbox version. It's been out a year. Surely they figured a few things out. So I downloaded the Xbox version on day one. Day one was only like about, I want to say a week and a half ago or something. So it's relatively new. It came out either was like first or second like October 4th or something, like very, very recently. So I downloaded it on day one on my Xbox, fired it up, and started getting into it. First thing you notice is the character creation is very deep, which I love. You know, a lot of customizations, not only around, you can multi-class, you can do all that stuff. And a lot of great customizations, a lot of great class depth, like all the classes in Pathfinder seem to be hiding there somewhere. And a lot of great, customization around your looks, your appearance, pretty much anything you can dream up, you can do, which is awesome. Like, for example, my character, I was trying to create a version I have a gnome arcane archer in my brother's campaign called Namfoodle Boondiggle. This is his name, Namfoodle Boondiggle, and he's got a little cantrip magic item, a cloak of billowing. It does nothing but billows. So every time he says his name, he's very arrogant. It's cloak billows. This is in my brother's campaign, but I wanted to have Namfoodle, arcane archer, so like Master Archer Gnome as my main character in this game. So I recreated Namfoodle, and Namfoodle Boondiggle is a forest gnome. He thinks he's a forest elf. Like he wants to be an elf. His dream is to be a forest elf, but he's a forest gnome. So he's this forest gnome, but he's a good archer. And because he's foresty, he has, and in my brother's campaign, he has a pet. He has this giant serpent that he rides around on. Long story. So I was like, I want to have a pet in this game. And they actually had the option to create a hunter class, which is an archer, is very good at archery, has a few spells, which is always fun, but then also can have a pet. And the pet travels, and you can choose all kinds of pets. And you could choose a mammoth. And I'm like, how could I not have a mammoth? So I had this mammoth. Of course, I named the mammoth Fluffy. What's really cool is the mammoth's like a little mammoth, but then when you hit level 7, he becomes a very big mammoth. And to kind of share the level of detail in this game, when eventually I found medium barding. And I was like, I wonder if my mammoth can wear barding. And at first he couldn't. And I was like, they didn't let the mammoth wear barding. But then I realized the mammoth wasn't proficient in barding. And so when I leveled him up, I gave him medium barding proficiency, put it on. And sure enough, like the graphics, it modeled all of the barding on the woolly mammoth. And you can actually mount your mammoth. So I got this little gnome riding a mammoth with a bow. I'm like, come on, that's awesome. So like that was really cool. So the attention to detail and what you can do and what you can dream up, very fun, but also it kind of works, which is great. Like in combat, Fluffy is insane. Like I've got Fluffy's armor class now to something ridiculous like 38. And Fluffy has the charge mechanic, and when he hits people, he knocks them down. So this thing will charge in the middle of the enemy. And I also gave him the feat that he can get attacks of opportunity whenever anybody leaves his threat zone, right? So I send him in like a missile into the middle of like 6 enemy guys, and he like knocks one of them down. They all start to walk away, and normally he would only get 1 attack of opportunity, but he gets it now equal to his dex bonus, which is like 4. So he gets to whack all these people trying to run away. They all get knocked down. It's hilarious. Hilarity ensues. It's pretty great. Now, so creating your own character, a lot of options there. Really, really great. My daughter was creating a character, and she was creating, I forget what they call it in the Pathfinder universe, but it's a cat person. And when she was creating a character, she goes, "Oh my gosh, Dad, I have to literally draw up 2 different people because the cat people can transform and look like humans or cats." And so you had to completely model your human version of yourself and your cat version of yourself. You can let auto create it, but you can pick your fur, kind of ears you got, all that stuff, which is, again, part of the fun of these games. So she did all that, which is great. She's been sucked into it too. But one of the things that made this game really compelling for me was not only did it have, it was Pathfinder, amazing character creation, all that, but there's this moral conundrum too. So, and this is pretty obvious from the advertising, right? So in this particular story, demons are attacking the world, and there's a big demon invasion going on. And you can choose to side with the light, like the forces fighting against the demons. And they kind of hint that at the end, you may become like angelic, like maybe you'll become an angel, and they kind of show that. Or you can side with the demons, and maybe at the end you become a demon. I don't know, because I haven't gotten that far. But that was interesting to me too, right? So I always liked the old BioWare games, the old Star Wars games and things, or Knights of the Old Republic, where you could choose to be a Jedi or a Sith, and actually that could change. And as you chose things, it really impacted it. And for those of you who have listened to my D&D campaign, also that I love to do a lot of non-combat roles, like all the time in my campaigns. I just find that fun. This game does that in a really interesting way. So whenever you're doing dialogue anywhere with any NPC, and there's a lot of it, it's a typical text tree sort of situation when you're talking to someone. But what's interesting about it is it'll say things, there'll be all these interesting options, like it'll say lore check, and then you'll see the question you can answer and you can ask. Like, there might be this wise individual wearing a really interesting robe talking to you, and it'll say lore check. Is this individual from this particular sect of individuals? And so maybe he's like pretending he's from this particular group of clerics. And by making that lore check, if you succeed, it'll say, well, it looks like he's the cleric, except normally they don't have this symbol. It's the exact same thing a DM would say. It's like normally you would expect to see the cross located in the upper left-hand corner, but for some reason in his, that cross is missing. And you're like, ooh, that's interesting. Or it'll tell you the roll fails. It'll say like, lore check failed. He looks perfectly dressed just like a normal cleric from that sect. And you're like, crap. It's just like when you're in D&D in the den and you're saying like, can I tell if he's actually a member of those paladins? And you're like, roll, and you roll a 1, and the dungeon master's like, you think he's exactly, and you're like, crap, I can't tell. So it does a really cool job of that. And in fact, I came across this one guy sitting by a campfire in a random encounter, and he's trying to lure me in to have a drink with him. And my initial perception check, I could tell failed. And it's like, he looks friendly. But then he starts to give me some tea. And it says, examine the tea, nature check. And Namfoodle happens to be, again, he's a wood gnome, so he's pretty good at nature checks. He passes a nature check and it says, oh, this is an interesting use of this herb. It's normally found in paralysis potions. You're like, oh, I think I'll stop drinking that now. So like that level of detail is awesome. But the other thing they did that's really cool is part of the choice system is when you're having these dialogues, you can also say things, and they put alignment choices at the beginning. So, for example, someone comes up and he says, one of your soldiers that reports to you later in the game, you can command armies, of course, because you're leveling up. You got your general, and one of your soldiers just attacked, and he comes up to you, he's all bloody. He's like, sir, I have a report from the battlefield. And like, you have these choices you can say to him. And one of them is good. It's in parentheses, good. And it says, have a rest, soldier. Can I offer you a drink? You look tired. So you're doing the good response. Or you can say, lawful, and it'll say, quick report, soldier, we've got work to do, or you can say, it'll say, whatever, it'll be different, or evil, like stand at attention, soldier, why are you slouching in front of me, that kind of thing. And when you choose those, it will move your alignment slightly. So you can actually move your alignment. So you have alignment spectrum, just like in more classic Dungeons and Dragons. I know more modern Dungeons and Dragons seems to be moving away from alignment a little bit, but in this one, there's actually one of your character sheet screens in Pathfinder here shows you the alignment wheel. And so you're moving from chaotic to lawful, and you're moving from good to evil. And there's some really interesting stuff that happens. Like later, you can work with paladins. There can be members of paladins in your party. You can also have lawful evil folks in your party. You can have chaotic folks in your party. And they all act different ways, and they expect different kinds of interactions. And there are really some text choices you want to say as a person. Like there's really interesting moral responses to make in certain dialogue trees that you want to say, but you also want to preserve your character's alignment, or maybe you don't. And I found it to be really interesting because I actually feel like I'm role-playing Namfoodle. Like I feel like Namfoodle is chaotic good in my mind. He's always chaotic good. He does the right thing, but he's not so hung up on certain laws, right? He's not hung up on a particular way you have to do things, just whatever you can do to get things done well. And he does like a little chaos, right? It's a little craziness. So I tend to pick chaotic answers, and I tend to pick good answers, but there's never an answer that's like chaotic good or chaotic evil. It's like chaotic, it's good, it's law. And so over time, you're adjusting your character's alignment. You pick in the beginning, but then you adjust. And then certain items, certain magical things are pro and con for certain things, and other people's disposition towards you will change as well. But then the other interesting thing is, so when you're answering questions, a lot of times it's just to choose, but then sometimes it'll involve skill checks when you're talking to people. And then sometimes it'll influence your alignment, and your alignment choices will change. The interesting thing is with the alignment, you can always answer in a way that's counter your current alignment. It's not that if you're good, you can't pick the evil choice. It's that if you pick the evil choice, you become less good. Does that make sense? So you can be rude, right? You can be super nice all the time, but then someone could betray you, and you can just be like, the lawful answer is to take them to trial, and you could be like, chaotic, slay them now kind of thing. Like, so you can do whatever you want. It just has consequences, which is pretty interesting. The only place that's not true. Well, yes, you can always try a skill check. You might fail. You can always, it's also a cool game because it's a save any time game. You can't save in the middle of a dialogue tree, but you can save pretty much anytime you're not in dialogue, and you can save anytime you're not in combat. So you can't save in the middle of combat, and you can't save in the middle of dialogue. So you can certainly save right before dialogue, try it out. Actually, if you don't like it, you can reload. And load times are pretty quick, at least on the Xbox Series X. So I don't do that much. I tend to like to live with what I do because it makes it feel more role play. But you certainly could. But one of the things that's pretty interesting is so for the alignment stuff, you can just pick whatever you want, and it has consequences. But there's one other set, and I'm going to get the names wrong, but it's there's these things called paths. There's like the angelic path, and then there's there's a different path. And I think these paths are, I don't know if these are Pathfinder RPG specific concepts. My apologies for not knowing Pathfinder, or if they're just paths in this game. So there's an archangel path I mentioned before, and there's like this demonic path. And early on, you can start to pick these things, but then over time, they'll show like they could have been a choice, but they're grayed out. So in other words, once you decide to sort of be a warrior for the angels or a warrior for the demons, you start to your opportunities to leave the path go away, and you're now you can see there would have been a choice, but you can't make it now because you already chose to side with them, right? And it's pretty clear when that's going to happen. So that's really interesting too, right? So you can kind of decide, okay, so you can kind of see how your choices matter there too. So that's really compelling also. And then in addition to that, there's just like which missions you go on. Another thing, word of warning is there's a lot of time-based things. So when you're on the map and you're thinking what to do next in your quest, it's not real time in terms of like if you wait 5 minutes past in the game, but you do eventually have to rest. You do eventually, as you travel around the city, it'll tell you how many hours it'll take to move from point A to point B or travel around the world. And when you rest for 8 hours or whatever that time passes, and my daughter found, she's playing through the game as well, she found that she chose to do things in a different order than I did. Certain characters no longer became available to her. Certain options no longer became available to her, or different options. She's got a character in her party I never saw, and vice versa. So all those choices matter, and they seem to matter deeply, and which is really impressive too. The other part about it that I think role-playing players will really enjoy, like the resting system, when you actually decide to rest, to relearn your spells, to heal, to get your hit points back and everything, you have to assign party members to all the different stations at the camp. So someone's got to try to keep back the evil, chaotic corruption that kind of creeps in everybody's brains every night because the forces of demons are everywhere. Someone's got to camouflage the camp so we don't get jumped by monsters. Someone's got to keep watch. Someone else can cook the food, and different recipes you cook will give the party different bonuses for the next day. Someone else may want to scribe some scrolls for the party, for example. So you can assign different characters to that, and your character's stats will affect those sorts of things, which is pretty cool as well. Which again gives you that feeling of like, hey, it's a D&D campaign. Who's on watch? Who's on first watch? Who's on second watch? All that stuff, which is good fun. I like that part as well. You start to, and the other thing too that'll eventually happen is, I believe you can have, I want to say it's 6 people in your party at any one time, but you definitely meet more than 6, and you can choose when you go back to your base. They're all hanging out. 10 of them or however many there are, and there might be more because, like I said, you don't always find them all in your playthroughs. So, you will then go back and you might pick to have different party members go out with you in different situations. Certain side quests require certain party members, things like that, because it's a request for them. And so, not like Mass Effect and BioWare, right? So when you grab these guys, again, you're going to be like, oh no, I don't have my thief with me. She's not able to pick the locks as well. Or I don't have the person that's a really good cook with me this time. We can't have that great meal that gives me +3 on my skill tests, So really, that part's really compelling too. So I'm really enjoying all that stuff. The micromanagement's pretty great. I'm liking that. And you can turn all that off, or you can have a lot of it be automatic, but I kind of like fiddling with that stuff. The other thing I will say is the combat system. There's 2 modes of play for combat, and you can toggle back and forth at will. So one of them is my favorite, which is turn-based tactical. So think XCOM or Baldur's Gate or Divinity, right? Those games are all super great turn-based tactical combat. This has got those same elements where it shows the AoEs of your spells, and you got an action bar, and you can when you're trying to cast Burning Hands, you'll see what the little arc looks like, and you pick the spot and everything. It's great. Or you can go real time. In real time, all the other characters are controlled by AI. Basically, you can flip back and forth, but basically you're running one, and everybody else is controlled by AI. In theory, what this would mean would be you could flip to real time for a quick, easy battle, blast right through it, and then you could flip back to turn-based for the really complicated battles, or maybe play the entire game real time or turn-based, depending on your preference. In practice, my daughter's more of a real time person. I'm more of a turn-based person, so I never leave turn-based She tried real time, but felt that some of her people were sort of idiots. So she's staying mostly with turn-based and really only uses real time in the most trivial of situations. There is a bunch of settings you can do for real time, like a bunch of automatic settings, like always stay at a certain range and use your bow, or lead with this spell and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, that feels like a lot of hard work. So we've been doing turn-based, but your mileage may vary on that. So far it's been really interesting. I'm really enjoying it. From what I've read, I've got probably about, 20 hours into this game. And from what I've read, it's probably 100-hour or so adventure, depending on how much side questy stuff you do. What I will say though about it, the only negatives, there's a couple of negatives. The biggest negative is it's buggy. So they were not wrong about it being buggy. Now the good news is they patched the game since like I said, downloaded on day one, which is I feel like it was October 4th. So it's now October 15th as of this recording. And there's already been 2 patches, which is great because the first patch fixed a deal-breaking bug, which was sometimes randomly in combat, your little action bars would go blank on all your characters. And once this happened, the only way to get it to get those bars to come back would be to reload the game, right? Which is not a big deal, except in the middle of combat, you can't save, right? So if you're in a long, protracted, complicated combat and your bars go away, you got a problem, because basically that means all you can do is basically swing your sword at that point. You can't cast any spells, you can't do anything fancy, you can't use any of your abilities. In a minor battle, no big deal. You finish it out just by beating them with your swords, save the game, reload, you're fine. But in a major battle, you might not be able to win without your abilities. Probably won't. And so you're going to have to reload now. And if you were deep in the battle, some of the battles can take a little while. It's the only other negative is I wish you could save in the middle of a battle. Some of the battles are quite long. I understand why they don't let you. That way you can't test every, move and maybe roll things back if they don't work. I understand the philosophy about it. But if you have a situation where a battle can go longer than an hour and you can't save it, that kind of sucks. Now, the good news is, Xbox has got, particularly the new X and S's, have really good resume in the middle of the game thing. So you can kind of turn the Xbox off. It remembers where it was and comes right back and works pretty well. So that works actually pretty great. The good news is they patched the game. So that bug I was telling you about went away. The only bug that's there now that I find annoying is there's actually a really slick system in this thing where whenever you're looking at your inventory or even having a dialogue, you can hit a button, you can click the right stick, and it tells you, a screen pops up and gives you all the information about whatever item you're currently hovering over your inventory. So you could be on a sword and it'll pop up and tell you it's a +3 longsword and it's like all the data about it and you can see the stats. Same true too, if you're in a dialogue tree, you can hit the glossary button, and if they're mentioning the name of a city, it'll tell you the whole backstory about that city. Like if you really like to get into the world building, man, it's all in here. The problem is there's a bug that gets the window layering wrong. So what happens is the description windows end up coming up behind the window that has the item in it. So you can see the description will pop up. You just can't read the description because it's behind the item window. And the only way to fix that is to reload the game. Now, the good news is that's not a deal breaker in combat. It's not a big deal if it happens in combat. You finish out the battle and reload. So the good news is the only remaining bugs I can find now are quality of life bugs that are annoying, but you can reload the game. And I will say this about the game, because it's the opposite of Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn was perfectly polished, but was missing a certain something to make it like amazing. Pathfinder, the way the story works, the way the plot twists that are already happening, the unexpected things that are occurring, the evilness, the tough decision making. Like I had to rescue this order of black armored, essentially anti-paladins who were against the demons, and I had to decide: well, A, do I even rescue them? B, do I want to bring these forces to my side? They're lawful evil, but they will fight the demons for us. And so is the enemy of my enemy my friend kind of thing, which seems like kind of a trivial one. This is an easy example. There are much harder ones now. And there's a traitor amongst in our party, or is there? And it's kind of like Battlestar Galactica or Camelot. Someone's a traitor, maybe. And I got to figure them out. And they're probably one of the party members that I've grown to depend upon. And it's probably not the person who's wearing the amulet that doesn't let me see their alignment. Or is it? Is that too obvious? Or is it not too obvious, right? Like a lot of cool stuff going on like that. Plus the combat's wonderful. It's it's Pathfinder, but it's Dungeons and Dragons in the end, which is great. All your favorite spells are in there. All your favorite abilities are in there. So many of your favorite monsters you've fought for years and years are in there. The art's fantastic. The art style's fantastic. The music's wonderful. Can't say enough good things about this one, even though it's rough around the edges. I want to stress this is a rough around the edges game, which is a shame because when they can polish this thing, it's not as rough as Cyberpunk was, but it's rough. And I, by the way, I enjoyed Cyberpunk a lot, by the way, and that Netflix show. Awesome. Anyway, okay. Well, I probably should stop here and let you guys go, but definitely highly recommend. Both these games are a lot of fun. Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West was a blast, but the unexpected, I don't know, call it sleeper hit, I don't know, whatever, but Pathfinder Path of the Righteous, definitely worth a check out. It's definitely on PC already, and it's been out on PC for over a year, so I'm sure the PC version is probably very bug-free and working great. The Xbox and PlayStation versions just dropped this month. They've been patching them like crazy. So they've got some nuances, but man, my daughter and I are both really, really enjoying it. So give it a try and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.